I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography without question. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography. That's true.
Starting out our list at number 10 is Lizzie Borden. Born on July 19, 1860, Lizzie lived with her sister Emma, father Andrew, and stepmother Abby. On August 4, 1892, Andrew and Abby were found dead in their house, murdered in their sleep. Their bodies were found mutilated by an axe at separate locations within the house, Andrew on the couch downstairs and Abby in the upstairs bedroom. The first suspect in the case was Lizzie, and she was indicted on December 2nd of that same year. It was suspected that she had burned her dress that was stained with paint, which may have been blood. In the end, no one was actually charged with the murders. The case remains unsolved to this day. Next, at number 9, Charles Manson. His given name was Charles Miles Maddox. However, it was later changed to Manson when his mother married. Manson made his way through the first 32 years of his life with petty crime and lived behind bars. However, he's more known for his cult following. He was influenced by drugs, artwork, and the Beatles' song Helter Skelter. Manson had an odd obsession with Armageddon and convinced his followers that he was Jesus reincarnate. In August of 1969, Manson led his followers into Tinseltown to massacre the elite and beautiful people. Ironically, Manson and his following were arrested for suspicion of vandalism, not as murder suspects. But a random confession from Susan Atkins about murdering Gary Hinman led the police to find out they had Manson and his crew. Still alive today, Manson was denied parole for the 12th time in 2012.
One of the most infamous serial killers in history, Jack the Ripper, fills our 8th spot. Haunting London's East End in the late summer of 1888, Jack the Ripper murdered at least 5 prostitutes. And the sense that these women were murdered made the professionals believe that Jack had knowledge of human anatomy. The name Jack the Ripper comes from a letter written by someone who claimed to be him. Many letters were sent to the Scotland Yard by the alleged Ripper, taunting the police and threatening future murders. His last victim, Mary Kelly, was his brutalist killing, where organs were spewed across the entire room. Experts believe that because the Ripper was invited into her home, he had more time to commit his murderous acts than before being out on the streets. Multiple theories and multiple suspects have been produced, but the mystery still remains.
Sneaking into our 7th spot is Gordon Stewart Northcott, known for the Wineville chicken coop murders. Along with the help of his nephew Stanford, whom he kidnapped from Canada, Northcott built a chicken ranch. For nearly 2 years he abused Stanford and also made him help with his butchery of as many as 4 young boys and the rape of at least 20. When Northcott's sister came into town from Canada, Stanford confessed to the murders. Northcott ran with the aid of his mother, but they were soon apprehended in British Columbia. Northcott was sentenced to death and was hung on February 13, 1929. Later, in 2008, they made a movie on his horrendous murder entitled Changeling, following the story of Walter Collins, one of the boys who allegedly escaped right before Northcott was apprehended. Hailing from Spain, Enrique Martí fills our 6th spot. Known as the Vampire of Barcelona, Martí was known for his superior medical remedies. Unbeknownst to the public, those medicines were made of her victims. Alongside prostituting children, Martí killed children and grounded them up into concoctions. With over 10 innocent murders, Martí was arrested in 1912. She was never tried, however, since she was killed in prison beforehand.
Many have heard of Ted Bundy, and he takes our 5th spot. Infamous for murdering and raping at least 36 women throughout the 70s, Bundy grew up believing that his mother was his sister. During college, Bundy fell in love with a rich girl, but good things don't last and they broke up. Devastated by the split, Bundy's victims held an uncanny resemblance to his college ex. Bundy was caught multiple times but escaped custody on a few occasions. He was finally caught for good in Florida, where he acted as his own lawyer in his trial. Bundy was killed on the electric chair on January 24, 1989.
The Zodiac Killer takes our 4th spot. Only directly linked to 5 murders in the late 60s, early 70s, the Zodiac Killer still remains an unsolved case. The Zodiac Killer went around shooting people and even sent letters to the police and press, even calling a 911 dispatcher taunting them. In one that was deciphered, the killer explained why he wouldn't reveal himself, as he wanted to collect slaves for the afterlife. He signed most of them with a circle with a cross through the middle. Many people have their theories about the killer's identity, most recently being Ted Cruz. But in a CNN article a few years ago, one man believes that his dad, deceased Earl Best Jr., and another suspect from 2014, Richard Kwiatkowski, and a few other suspects, are to be the notorious Zodiac Killer.
Jeffrey Dahmer was a confident child until a minor surgery and the birth of his brother. Around his teen years, Dahmer's psychological breakdown led to his compulsions towards necrophilia and murder. His first murder happened shortly after graduating from high school in 1978, killing Stephen Hicks. Enrolling in the Army after high school, Dahmer was later kicked out for alcoholism, and it was believed that he was connected to the murders in that area at the time. After returning home, Dahmer was arrested a handful of times, mostly for public indecency. In 1987, Dahmer took his second victim, Stephen Toomey, whose remains were never found. In 1989, Dahmer was on trial for child molesting and showed off his charismatic side by pleading guilty and understanding the errors of his ways. With more victims under his belt, Dahmer's actions became more sadistic and he turned to cannibalism. Dahmer was almost caught in May 1991, but the police never investigated his house. He was caught in July of 1991 and confessed during the police interrogation but pleaded innocent during the trial. Dahmer was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison, or 957 years. He was later killed in prison by Christopher Scarver.
Ed Gein had an obsession with his mother, and when she died, he started robbing graves. With the bodies that he dug up, he took some as trophies, practiced necrophilia, and even tried human taxidermy. Some of his horrific creations included gloves, pants, bowls, and even a mask. In 1954, Gein started a murder, and in 1957, he was caught. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity and was sent to a mental hospital. He died in 1984 of cancer. He was also the influence for many fictional characters, such as Norman Bates in Psycho, Jim Gump in Silence of the Lambs, and Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Before we give our top pick, here are some honorable mentions. Joseph Stalin is known as the extreme communist leader of the Soviet Union during World War II and part of the Cold War, as well as for making over 14 million people disappear and not to have been heard from since. Adolf Hitler is known for the mass genocide of Jews during World War II, killing over 6 million people, mainly of Jewish descent. While both racked up massive body counts, they do not meet the standards of a serial killer, which is defined as a person who murders 3 or more people, usually in the service of abnormal psychological gratification, with the murders taking place over more than a month and include a significant break or cooling off period between them. While they don't follow this definition, they still deserve an honorable mention.
Better known as the Blood Countess, Elizabeth Bathory was the world's real-life Dracula. Airing from an extremely wealthy home in the late 15th century, her murders continued into the early 16th century. Bathory ranked up a body count of over 640 deaths, most of the young peasant girls whom she acquired from her staff at home, daughters of servants, and even girls sent to her to learn proper manners. She enjoyed torturing the young girls by stabbing them, biting their breasts, hands, face, and arms, along with sticking needles into their lips or burning them with irons. Others were beaten or starved to death. Bathory believed that if she drank the blood of young females, it would preserve her youthful looks, and there were even reports that she bathed in their blood. She was apprehended in 1610, and so were 4 of her servants, who were tried, and 3 were executed. Bathory herself was never put on trial due to her family's riches, and was locked in her castle, where she later died in 1614.